Listen and subscribe to the GrowthCraft Startup Community Podcast on all the major podcast players, including iTunes, Google Podcasts, Spotify, and everywhere where podcasts are available. And leave a 5-star review if you like it. We need those reviews to grow the show, and it's the easiest way to help us grow the show that you can do right now. So head on over to iTunes, head on over to Google Podcasts or Spotify, and leave a 5-star review for the GrowthCraft Startup Community Podcast. And tell all of your friends who are entrepreneurs to take a listen. And thanks. Hello, my name is Hasan Sorrells. This is Tom Living, and you are listening to the GrowthCraft Podcast. The GrowthCraft Podcast is designed with the startup founder in mind. This podcast is committed to growing your connections to our GrowthCraft advisors, increasing your engagement with the GrowthCraft community, and to growing your knowledge about all of the benefits that GrowthCraft can provide for your startup and for your entrepreneurial project along your entrepreneurial journey. And we can't wait to bring you along on our journey today. Here on the podcast, we interview startup founders, advisors, and others about their journey, their process, and their path. And like I said before, we interview them about their entrepreneurial journey. And I'd like to welcome to the podcast today, Kevin Bernard. How you doing, Kevin?
I'm well today. Thank you for having me.
Awesome. So for our listeners, tell us a little bit about what it is that you do exactly.
Well, I'm a co-founder of local Biochar, and our business model is centered around manufacturing biochar kilns. For those that don't know, biochar is a charcoal-like substance. It has many great uses in being soil amendments for water retention and fertilizer retention. It filters out contaminants. It's water, mold, and pest resistant. So it works as a great aid in those that are even just your backyard growers, and certainly farmers. So recognizing that the biochar industry was definitely going to begin to take off, I went and searched for a kiln that was more at my scale of the waste management that I do. And I couldn't find anything. And I delved into looking into what it was going to take to develop my own kiln for my own needs and what I knew about what had to be constructed. And I designed my own kiln. I came up with a design that's very unique for what's available in the market. And the kiln is more situated to a smaller producer of waste. And most everything that's being out there right now being designed and sold and manufactured is large facilities. And it's geared towards larger producers for larger volumes, and they basis that on the only way to make money is to have large scale production of biochar. I haven't really believed that, and what I did was making sure I spent enough time in the design to literally focus on just a smaller scale. And it's mobile, and that's another feature that really is not addressed. And I make sure that it's something that can be towed behind a half-ton truck, can go into many different places, and can give versatility, I guess, to the many producers of waste. I'm all about sustainability. I'm very passionate about it. And I convey myself as being an answer in some ways to waste management, especially organic waste management. And it's very preventative to CO2 emissions. It's a very clean emission-free process. and it's pretty simple to get the basics on how to do it, and I help people learn how to use it and make their own biochar. And that's something that really has been needed, and I'm very proud of what I've developed. And I think that there's a lot of interest out there in exactly what I got. Excuse me.
No. So that was a great explanation, and thank you for sort of laying that out for us. Um, I have a follow-up question, if Tom will indulge me just a moment.
Of
Um,
course.
so I know, and I imagine most of our listeners probably know little to nothing about waste management, about sustainability, about biochar, um, about these terms that you've laid out so beautifully for us here in your explanation of what is it that you do exactly. So could you bring us into the weeds a little bit? Tell us, for our listeners, where does biochar and the use of biochar fit in the overall, and the only way I could maybe think of this question is supply chain, right? The overall supply chain of organic waste management. Sort of walk us through that for the average person who's just, throwing away their banana peels in the garbage and taking stuff out to the street corner, right?
Yeah, 'cause I had a similar question to that about like the difference between what you're talking about and like compost, right? Like
Yeah.
so in the supply chain probably says that better than what I was thinking. So I like that.
Sure. In its simplest sense, organic waste is something that can be reproduced and find a better end product. And the real separator is the emissions, even when it's in a compost pile, still set off CO2, and
Methane gases.
different methane and in different gases, correct. And the only way to really capture those emissions is to put it into a stable form and basically finish the process of decomposition. And biochar is the easiest way to do that, and it produces a solid carbon product, which is the end result of converting that biomass into a solid form that can be sequestered. That's the big piece of all of this, is to sequester those emissions. And it definitely affects the climate change in the fact that it's holding the CO2 in emissions. And it has many applications that can be used to store that carbon and avoided emissions, such as, again, the soil amendments. They're doing a lot of work in cement as being a substitute binder, and hempcrete's a popular thing that's coming online with it. Asphalt is a very good included product, and it's mostly because you don't really need to have high quality biochar products from it, and you can use marginal waste streams because it's just asphalt. It's not going to leach. It's not going to go anywhere that's going to be harmful to anything. And that's a lot of what's going on with the research, is the biochar is literally a sustainable way to take care of many different waste streams. And the example that I'll give the most is the waste wood that is out there. Municipalities have mountains of waste wood. In fire prevention, there's waste wood all throughout the forests. And that's become a hot topic to see if we could reduce the fire risks. And you look at, let's talk about building construction. There's a lot of waste wood that comes out of the natural process of building houses or commercial buildings. By having a biochar kiln there, you can process all of that waste wood into a biochar that can be used on site in many ways to handle your stormwater retention and runoffs, instead of throwing in the dumpster. The whole part of everything that I do is to divert the waste from a landfill. And diversion is where I start in my passion of providing sustainability options to people. Many people don't even consider that banana peel that got thrown into the trash. But food waste is something else that can be processed into biochar. And it's really what's catching on with people in biochar is literally rethinking everything about what you touch and throw away and how you can address your packaging decisions. Many different things that people are starting to think about now that climate change is a crisis and not just a fuzzy word. So there's a lot of different things that people can do to offset some of that, and I'm just looking for ways to literally be able to take that waste out of their hands and make a renewable product. And it certainly has many uses, and let's start doing it more.
For sure. So you've mentioned a couple of things that may have already answered this question, but I'd like you to articulate it a little bit more directly, which was like, so what prompted this for you? How did you wake up one morning and just say, I got to go fix this problem? Like what was there some, epiphany that you had, or was there like some sort of event that just catalyzed, like just propelled you to do this?
Well, I didn't just wake up some morning and say, I want to tackle the world and let's make biochar for everybody. But what I did was I started another business called Canna Waste Recycling, because anybody in the cannabis business absolutely had no answer for recycling of the materials. And let me tell you, it's a lot. So not being able to find ways to dispose of it because it's cannabis, I was pretty much forced into trying to find a way to deal with all the waste that I was collecting. I tried several different products and found nothing that really was applicable to it until I came across biochar. And biochar was just like a light bulb going off, and literally started me on the path of, okay, start small, figure it out, grow to the next size, get better results and get consistency. And I came to the point where I needed enough volume, or I needed more volume with the process that I was doing. So it came down to, I just had this idea in my head, well, if I'm doing 1 barrel to make biochar, why can't I do 4 in a 4x8 box? And I just kind of took the idea from there and started working out the math and talking to a couple of welders that might be able to fill in the blanks. And we came up with this design and put it to work. And it's been working great. There certainly has been some failures as far as, needing different door designs or going back and looking at some of the internals for the working parts, because we're also at 1200 degrees. So there's a lot of heat stress that goes on, and yeah, it definitely needs some change ups. But I stuck through it, and now I've got a very good design that can literally start looking at commercially selling these units. And I've lined up a manufacturer to work with me on it, and I'm happy to say that I can fill a market niche because there's nothing else that really was available. And I'm answering a lot of questions for a lot of different people and have a lot of different interest in what it is that I'm doing.
So in other words, a very, very eloquent way of putting that mother is still, that necessity is still the mother of invention.
Absolutely.
So you had something pop up that there was no solution for in the market. You just created the solution yourself, and now you can market that solution. That's brilliant to me. That is literally the epitome of that necessity is the mother of invention.
Absolutely. I would have never, so, my wife does gardening, has a compost pile, whatever, I've seen it in that sort of context, but I never thought about the industrialization of that process at scale. And so that just reveals my my poverty of imagination. you kind of answered the question about sort of why your solution is.
I'm stealing that line. Poverty of imagination. I'm sorry. I've never heard that before, but I'm definitely using it. I'm sorry, Asa, I cut you off. Go ahead. Sorry.
No. You're good. You're good. This is what I do. I just drop bombs like this and then I move on. It's good. So I do a lot of carpentry, right? I'm going to use myself as an example. I also do a lot of real estate development work, home building, that kind of stuff. And you're not kidding. Those sites, ton of just, wood byproduct, just stuff just sitting around. And you're right. It all goes into a 4-ton dumpster. You take it, you get the roll-off guy to come by. He takes it away. I don't know what happens to it after that. Okay. It's not really my concern, right?
Exactly.
Talk to me about, and I'm going to draw an avatar, right, for this question, right? I'm the real estate developer. I'm hiring, the builder. I'm hiring the dumpster roll-off guy. Where do you fit in there for me, and how do you get my attention, right? Why should I bring you onto my site? Why should I have your kilns come on and solve my problem? How do I get in touch with you? How do I work with you as the end user, or even just a contributor to Biochar? And here's a sub question: if I'm working with treated lumber, because that was another question I had, treated wood, right? That's got all the chemicals and all that kind of stuff in it. How does your process sort of navigate those struggles? Because some of those chemicals are quite poisonous, actually. Join the GrowthCraft startup community online via Zoom each first Tuesday of the month at 4:30 p.m. Eastern Time for Expert Tuesdays. With Expert Tuesdays, you'll hear from one of our top-notch expert advisors and thought leaders in an informative workshop or presentation focusing on a topic important to emerging and growing companies. From sales and marketing to storytelling and leadership, in this hour-long monthly session, you will be able to connect with the GrowthCraft community, advisors, founders, and others. And you'll learn entrepreneurship skills you can apply to your startup project right now. Check out the links to the GrowthCraft website to join us on Expert Tuesdays in the show notes below the podcast player you're listening to right now. And thanks.
Yes,
they certainly are. Specifically to start with that question, pyrolysis is the method that makes biochar, and the method of being at 1200 degrees and recirculating those emissions burns off like 95 to 100% of the emissions. And one of the things that they're doing now that I see in more than one place is they're doing railroad ties and to make biochar from. And the reason that that's doable essentially is all the creosote and other different things that they do to longevity for the wood, it can process and not send the emissions into the air. And emissions is one thing that is the concern of certainly the large facilities, but it's something that can be addressed just in the method of pyrolysis. And I lost one. Oh, to building contractors, essentially, carbon credits is a new thing. It's coming online. Most people are now beginning to look at their carbon footprint. For a builder to market sustainability in green building is something that really is not even out there yet. And people will look at you like you're a Martian because it's green, So, I was talking to one the other day and he said, that was something that I've been looking at for a long time, but had no idea how to implement it. He knows how to market it, but he doesn't know how to get there with it. And this was a simple answer. It's a small trailer. You put it off in the back corner of your job site. And when you get wood waste that mounts up, well, you have somebody start processing it. And the big thing is to throw it in the 55-gallon barrels that I use inside the kiln. And when you got it filled up, there you go. But don't throw it in the dumpster. And that's really what the passion with me is don't throw it in the dumpster. And
it is all about redirecting behavior.
Solving a problem that they don't know they have, right? Like you're trying to solve a problem you're solving a problem for a builder that the builder doesn't think of as a problem yet, or maybe they don't know, like they don't know of your solution because they didn't realize it was a problem. So that's probably another topic for another day, because that's probably more closer to like, how do you market it? How do you get people to think of it? How do you create how do you create a movement behind what you're talking about? Because to throw it in a dumpster and have it hauled away is the easiest version of this, right? The builder doesn't have to do anything. So yeah.
Yep. And we all know it goes to the landfills, and the landfills are probably one of the biggest polluters or leachers and damaging water in the air.
For sure.
They put methane pipes in it for a reason. It's just venting it.
So that leads me to another question, which I know Tom's got one as well. And maybe our questions overlap here. The landfills, right? So if I'm a landfill, I presume you're looking for those kinds of connections and referrals and contacts and things like that. But are you, what's the pitch to a landfill, right? Is it a sustainability pitch? Is it a carbon credit pitch? Like, what's the approach if I'm the owner of a landfill? Why would I want your solution?
They probably don't, because I'm taking waste away from them.
Right.
But the big thing with it is to talk to the creators of that waste, right, and convince them a change in behavior is going to avoid it ever getting to the landfill. Yeah. Not to mention, we're running out of landfill space in the whole country. Right. Why are we shipping waste? Because we don't have any space for it.
Yep. No one wants a landfill in their own backyard. Yeah, go ahead, Tom.
Yeah, for sure. I just wanted to circle back to a question that was part of Hassan's question a few minutes ago. So does your system is it okay for your system to put in that pressure treated wood? Like, does it still process that pressure treated wood? I don't think we quite answered that earlier. And to me, that's really key, because just so you know, I led a charge of there was one of the local state forests that I live right next to. There's a group that was putting in footbridges. And I basically put a stop to it because they were using pressure treated wood, and they were going over wetlands and all kinds of species that were being harmed. And like, I was like, you got to get these footbridges out of here, or use something different. You have some natural woods that fight against pests and stuff like that. I know it's more expensive, but if you use those woods, you don't have to worry about pressure treated. Anyway, back to the question. So does your system actually handle the pressure treated woods, or do you not put those in there because of some reason or another?
What I'm doing is basically some research on that to compare what a piece of pressure treated wood would be compared to a railroad tie. There's extensive work that's been done converting the railroad ties, and we know the results based on some emissions that were taken. It's basically a matter of a measurement of the emissions that have not been burned within the kiln itself in the design. And, that would certainly take a whole different effort for me to actually do the research and testing of it. One of the big factors of people that are producing biochar is we should only stick with one feedstock. You got to perfect that feedstock, because every feedstock in moisture content gives you a completely different result and a different profile of biochar, because not all biochar is the same, because not all feedstocks are the same. So I haven't, particularly on pressure treated wood, found much research to that, but because of the railroad work, I'm confident that that's something that's coming online. The science just isn't available at this time. And I'm pretty confident that most any weed or waste stream is being addressed as best we can to get more research done. Well, I don't know if that answered your question, but
yeah, no, it did.
Yeah, well, and it sounds like we're in the early stages of really sort of figuring out what's the best thing to do with the waste that we produce as human beings, how to best cycle that back into the system. And it doesn't surprise me that we're doing this in the United States of America, because typically what happens with technological innovations of any kind, you even see this in phones, right? The first person on the block to have a flip phone has a flip phone that's, $5,000. Nobody else has a $5,000 flip phone, but because the richest person on the block has a $5,000 flip phone, over the course of 10 years, that flip phone now goes from $5,000 to $100. And now all of a sudden everybody in a 10 block radius has one, right? It's the same thing with what it sounds like. It's the same thing happening here with the biochar process and with what you've developed. You're starting out at the high end of the market in a high end sort of environment like the United States, where carbon credits are set up, sustainability is a thing, and now we got to sort of explore some of these other areas and move this out over the course of time. And this sounds like a lifetime pursuit. Would I be correct on that, Kevin?
The passions is still there. Sustainability is still a major part of me. So yeah, I would say so.
Absolutely. So let's turn the corner just a little bit, and I'm going to ask you about your experiences with GrowthCraft. So talk to me about being a part of the GrowthCraft community, or talk to us about being part of the GrowthCraft community. What attracted you to joining us at GrowthCraft, and how are you leveraging the resources of the GrowthCraft community to help you build your project out? Join us online via Zoom at the GrowthCraft Startup Community Founders Forum each third Tuesday of the month at 4:30 p.m. Eastern Time. Look, advisors and founders, we're all in this together. Building relationships with your peers in entrepreneurship is just as important as connecting with experts and advisors. Each month, every third Thursday, we'll meet online via Zoom to share ideas, get support each other, and talk about universal issues that nearly all startups share. We'll celebrate our victories, chat about challenges, and then break out into small groups to address a timely topic of interest. It's a great way to meet like-minded entrepreneurs. Check out the links to the third Tuesday events on the GrowthCraft website, and join us at the GrowthCraft Startup Community Founders Forum in the show notes below the podcast player you're listening to right now.
JP has been in contact with me, and I love the guy for what he's doing. And what he's built, I find to be an endless source of resources. You guys have really good tools to literally help founders and small businesses overcome some overwhelming odds, and just direction to answer some odds, so we don't necessarily get off track and get lost in the minutia of everything that goes on every day. And I really appreciate what I get from GrowthPath, not so much just direct, but just in being able to discuss things and be able to interact with other founders and, compare what they've gone through to what I'm going through, and certainly the experience from everybody that's a part of GrowthCraft. And that's really a huge amount of value, especially when talking to the people that are making GrowthCraft happen. And, I just can't say enough, I guess, about what is given if you put the energy in. You do have to put the energy in, but you're really putting the energy out no matter whether you're following some of the input, no matter what. So you might as well talk to somebody that has walked the walk already. And that's one of the biggest benefits I can say is, experience helps all.
For sure. So wrapping up here, Kevin. So let's talk a little bit about, or give you a half a second or so to talk about, like, how do people find you if they want to learn more about this? How do they, is it something that you're looking to, to, like, are you doing talks, or are you on other podcasts? Like, where do people find you or find out more about this?
Well, this is the first podcast I've done.
See how awesome we are? No, just
I definitely have a couple other people that are reaching out to me to do podcasts because they're absolutely hearing the message that I have. And, I guess I'm less intimidated to do it. I guess that I would say that my passion comes through in how it can contribute. I have a website that's under development, and one of the barriers there is I'm not tech savvy, and I'm just beginning to get somebody on board to literally take what I have for info and put it in a professional way to present. The biggest way that I reach out to people and have people reach me is on LinkedIn. I've got a pretty robust following, and I generally am interactive there. I did work with Instagram. That was mostly about some of the cannabis people. That's really all they use is Instagram. But essentially, it's just me reaching out to people that are collaborative, I guess is a good word. And I just keep pushing and pushing and pushing, and people want to stay in touch with me and keep themselves attuned to what's going on. And my email is kevin@localbiochar.com. I'll always answer any emails that I get. And I like talking about biochar. So education is not a problem. I'm a pretty open person, and I'll probably have an answer. And if I don't, I'll know where to go get it.
Awesome.
Well, we will have links to all the places where you can find Kevin, including his email address, in the show notes below the player where you're listening to this podcast right now. So I want to thank Kevin for coming on the GrowthCraft Startup Community Podcast today. Always a pleasure. Please reach out to him to find out more, not only about biochar, but also about all of his sustainability efforts. Thank you very much, Kevin, for coming on the podcast today. We really do appreciate it.
Certainly do.
Thanks for having me. Very much.
Each second Thursday at 3:30 p.m. Eastern Time, join GrowthCraft live and in person at Second Thursdays at CIC, located at 1 Broadway, Cambridge, Massachusetts. Located at Kendall Square, CIC features the most engaging entrepreneurial community in the Northeast, right next to MIT and minutes from Harvard University and downtown Boston. With 250,000 square feet of professionally managed flexible workspace, CIC has every office amenity you could possibly need to scale your startup project. For those of you who are local, or if you're just visiting Boston, GrowthCraft advisors and founders can meet others in our community face-to-face. Join us for an informal social and informational get-together. Meet others, chat with advisors and peers, make connections, and then stay for Venture Cafe, starting at 4:30 p.m. Eastern every second Thursday at CIC. Check out the links to the GrowthCraft website to join us live and in person at Second Thursdays at CIC in the show notes below the podcast player you're listening to right now. And thanks.